think a lot of people don't really understand how our minds work. Think of an iceberg, right? When you picture an iceberg, there's this little bitty part above the surface of the water, right? But then there's this massive part underneath it, and that's conscious versus subconscious.
So why is it that all of the things that we do throughout our life goes back into the subconscious?
So the human mind evolved ultimately to keep us alive.
How does one identify being empathetic?
So empathy is putting yourself in someone else's shoes. But here's what I think people get wrong is we put ourselves in their shoes and then see things from our perspective.
Dr. Ashley Smith is a licensed psychologist, speaker, author, and co-founder of Peak Mind. Born with a rare vision impairment, she knows firsthand what it takes to break limits and live boldly. And now she teaches others how to do the same.
So our beliefs form the bounds of our comfort zone. Our beliefs form the instruction manual for how to be Ashley or how to be you moving through the world.
I want to start here because, while reading your book, I love the way that you use landscaping to talk about subconscious and conscious. Mm-hmm. And I want to hear from you today. And by the way, if you guys are watching, this is the book. It's called The Way I See It by Dr. Ashley Smith. And we're going to go into it today. So thank you for being here, by the way.
Thanks for having me. I'm excited to talk.
Absolutely. And I want you to give me an overview of what subconscious and conscious looks like. Because it's something that I hear online all the time, especially TikTok. People are talking about your conscious and your subconscious. Sometimes it comes as a very spiritual way, or sometimes it comes very analytical in my own realm with people in the finance industry. But in your own way, which I've read in the book, and I love the way that you break it down. What exactly is a conscious and a subconscious?
Yeah, well, I think a lot of people don't really understand how our minds work, right? So if we kind of start with this, right? Conscious versus subconscious, think of an iceberg, right? When you picture an iceberg, there's this little bitty part above the surface of the water, right? But then there's this massive part underneath it, and that's conscious versus subconscious, right? Yes. So conscious means that we are aware of it, that we can directly access it. So when you're using self-talk, when you're kind of thinking through things, when you're remembering what happened last week or what happened when you were 6 years old, that's all consciousness. But so much of what our minds do and the way they're working is behind the scenes. And I think of that as it's just out of our conscious awareness. So we don't actually know what we're thinking or why we're thinking it or even why we're doing the things we do. Right. So our brains love to automate things, meaning they want to put it on autopilot as fast as they can. So they take things and move it to our subconscious. So think about when you're a little kid and you're learning how to tie your shoes and you have to focus while you're doing that, right? And then when you master it, you can do it without even paying attention because it's been automated and moved to our subconscious. So much of what we do, so much of the way we react, so much of the way we see ourselves and understand the world is all that beneath the surface subconscious functioning.
Interesting. So why does that happen? Why is it that all of the things that we do throughout our life goes back into the subconscious, which I watch this show, like a kid's show. I can't remember the name right now, but it's a Disney show, about Riley, the little girl.
Oh, Inside Out.
Yeah, Inside Out. For some reason, I guess it was in my subconscious. I can't remember. It. But why does our mind do that? Is it like a protective mechanism?
Yeah, I like to think of things from an evolutionary standpoint, right? So the human mind evolved ultimately to keep us alive. That's its biggest job, is to keep us alive. So it is continually scanning everything that's coming in at us, right? So think about every bit of data that comes in from the second you wake up to the second you go to bed, right? Everything you can see, hear, smell, taste, touch. There's also everything coming on from the inside, right? Our blood sugar, our hormone levels, our heart rate. So our brains have to process all of this outside and inside data to figure out if we're in danger. Are we under threat? And to do that, it takes a lot of energy. And so if we had to consciously do all of that, think about if you had to sit here, even in this conversation, paying attention to what might be outside of the room and what your blood sugar is doing, it would just be too much. So as our brains evolved with that number one directive of keep us safe, they also tried to figure out, how do I conserve energy?
Oh, wow.
Right? Energy wasn't always readily available. We live in a modern culture where we have food is available for a lot of people as much as you want, but it wasn't the case for our ancestors, right? So if we look at energy as an actual caloric energy, brains are gas guzzlers. Compared to the rest of our body, they take about 20% of our calories to run compared to everything else, and they're only 3 pounds, right? So they take this disproportionate amount of energy. So they had to figure out how to conserve it.
Right.
So the way they do that is things get backburnered or automated. Right. They take shortcuts to process things. They run on rules of thumbs or scripts or things like that, all just to make it efficient.
Wow. That's incredible. And now I know why I'm like, like earlier before you get here, I was so depleted, and I just like grabbed some like candy downstairs, and I ate that just to like
feel pumped up. Yeah.
I need some energy. So like, what exactly is the cost if let's say someone is like not aware of all of this, and how does that look like?
Yeah. Well, I think most of the time we're not nearly as aware as we want to be, or as we think we are, right? There's this classic study that on self-awareness where 85% of people think they're self-aware, but only 15% of people are.
That's a high number,
right?
85%.
Yeah. Well, we're all running around thinking that we're in charge. I know what I'm doing and why I'm doing that, but we're not.
Right.
About half of what you do in a given day is autopilot.
Wow.
We're just reacting without intentional volitional choice, right? Think about if you drive and you've ever gotten in your car and say you moved offices or you moved homes and you got halfway home to the old place before you realized it, you operated a car on autopilot. Right? And we do this all the time. And it's not just our habits of action, but also the way we respond to things. So it becomes a habit if your default is to go to the worst case scenario or to be negative. But we do all of this without even realizing why. But here's the kicker. If you stop and someone goes, why did you just do that? Your subconscious is going to push a reason up to you. And you're going to say, oh, I did that because of X, Y, Z. So you think you're in charge, but our mind is back there driving the bus unless you've done a lot of work to sort of pull things from the subconscious to the conscious or to, I like to think of it as reprogramming. So unless you've done the work to become aware, to become intentional, and to reprogram your mind.
Wow, that's so fascinating because even the fact that you say 85%, to me that's scary. Like 85% of people think they're self-aware, but they're not. And to me, I had the luxury of going to therapy. I call it luxury because I know a lot of people cannot, afford to get or even know about it.
Right.
And especially my own background and my family in general, therapy is not a thing. But like when you talk about the subconscious mind, to me, the years of time that I spent in therapy, I guess I've been able to like visualize things, especially when it comes to decisions. I like try to take some time and then visualize things. Is like in my own brain. That's kind of like how it works for me.
Yeah.
But then I find that so exhausting. Is that a sign of like being aware of your subconscious? Maybe I'm just trying to just brush my ego and be like, I'm actually aware, guys.
Well, you might be one of those that falls into that 15% who actually are self-aware.
Yeah, then guys, I am very self-aware.
Right? I mean, I like to think I am too, right? Like this is the stuff I think about all day, every day, and I have for decades, and I still have those moments where I'm like, damn. Ooh, I didn't realize that's what was going on. I didn't realize that's how I was feeling or why I was feeling that or why I was reacting in that way. So I don't think anybody becomes I don't think we can move everything from subconscious to conscious because some of it is going to remain back there. Like we're never going to be in charge of our heartbeat.
Right.
Nor do we want to be, right? I don't want to have to be intentional about making my heart beat every second of the day. I'm going to let my subconscious take care of that or my unconscious even, right?
This is incredible because me as someone with like a programming background, now you've opened so many like philosophical questions that I've held in my subconscious, I guess.
Yeah.
Because, as a developer, I know that, I know the computers are dumb. They don't know anything. I guess with AI now that's changing, they're actually becoming conscious. But like as a computer, we as a developer, we like create all the parameters and then it kind of operates within that.
Yeah.
But the computer thinks it's alive. It thinks it can do all these things. It can connect with different networks, but I can just come in and unplug it and then end it.
Yeah.
But then but now that in AI is being introduced and all this, I feel like now computers is also tapping into its consciousness, which is scary.
Well, and that gets into like the whole philosophical debate of like, what is consciousness? I'm not qualified to weigh in on that for sure.
Same here.
But it's interesting. And so I'm not a developer by any means, but I like using a computer as a metaphor for the human mind, right? Like if you think of your hardware is your brain, like the physical organ, your brain, and the software is your mind, right? And it takes both of those, and it's the interaction between the two that allows this computer to work, right? But most people sit down at their computer and what they're interacting with is that interface, right? Like the display with the icons on it, and have no idea about all of the stuff behind the scenes. That's what it's like to be human, is most people are moving through life and we've got our hardware and our software, our brain and our mind, and people don't understand how it works or why it does the things it does. And that's a problem.
Yeah, it is. And now as a developer, I'm like, computers are becoming alive, guys. They're about to tap into their consciousness, subconscious mind, which they're going to be aware that we're the ones setting the rules. That's it just came to me. But like, speaking of computer, the first section in your book, you talked about the mind's game we play. And you mentioned that there's one thing, you say, if there's one thing I wish I knew, it is this. What is that one thing?
I want everybody to know that you cannot believe everything you think, right? So I think of it like this, like you have a stomach, right? And it growls or rumbles, but you don't say, I am growling. You say, my stomach is growling, right?
Weird. Yes.
It would be. Or your heart, right? And when it goes up and it's pounding, you don't say, I am pounding. You say, my heart is pounding. Well, stomachs growl, hearts beat, minds think. That's what they do. They're just thought generating machines designed to keep us alive, but they're thought generating machines. And yet we tend to fuse with those thoughts, meaning we take them as us and as fact, reality, as a directive that we must follow. And so what I want people to understand is, no, your mind is its own thing and you are not it. And it is kind of like a frenemy. Right? It's there. It's helping you out in so many ways. But because of the way that it works and what it was designed to do, it's going to skew negative. It's going to jump to conclusions. It's going to predict things that are not correct. And if you don't know that and you're just listening to everything it says and you're taking this as I think this, I know this. That's where we fall into problems.
I like that. And, back when I used to go to therapy, I mean, I go now, but not very often because I feel like this is therapy for me at this point.
Absolutely.
But like one thing that I learned is like, the language that we use when you talk about ourselves is like, for example, someone who has cancer, they don't say I am cancer. They say I have cancer, but in mental health, people say, they identify themselves with that, like illness, whatever that may be. So I can see that play in like the way that you're talking about this. But let's say there's someone who is identifying themselves with whatever is happening in their life. How can they tap out of that and be like, get out of that matrix or whatever people are calling it nowadays?
Yeah. Well, I think there's a few things. I mean, one, it starts with awareness, right? It is that becoming aware of what your mind is doing. And there's a lot of ways to do that. Therapy is one. Self-reflection is another. Simply taking a minute to say, why did I do that? What thoughts were going through my mind at that time, and starting to catch the thoughts. Like some people are really aware of their thinking. They're in their heads all the time. A good chunk of people have no idea. And they'll tell me like, I don't know. Nothing was going through my mind. I'm like, I'm going to call BS. Minds are thought generating machines. They are always thinking. We can tune in or out. But the first thing is start to become aware, reflect, practice mindfulness. Mindfulness is a huge tool for being able to just notice what your mind is doing, right? That I can sit there and say, wow, it just jumped to this worst case scenario, or, oh, it's worrying. Oh, it's being negative. The other thing that we can do, and I teach people, is to start to say, my mind is telling me, or I'm having the thought. And that starts to get a little bit of that distance, right? That separates me from my mind. So if you find yourself thinking, I can't believe I just did that, I'm such an idiot, I would tweak that language a little bit. Because like to your point, language matters, right? So I would say, oh, I just made a mistake. My mind is telling me that I'm an idiot. Because now all of a sudden I have a choice. Am I going to listen to my mind or not? And I tell you, if it's not helpful, we're not listening to it.
Right. No, yeah, that's true. And I'm trying not to bring my wife into this.
I'm not getting in the middle of that.
I don't want to be in trouble, so I'll just let that slide. I'll talk to my therapist about
There you go.
Another thing that you've touched on in your book, since we're talking about the mind, subconscious, it's like you talk about shared world and like external world. Can you break that down for us? Because I found it so fascinating.
Yeah, and that's something I think most people don't really understand. And so I appreciate you bringing it up. The way I see it is that we all live in two worlds at the same time. We have our outside world. And so that is the world that you and I are both existing in, right? Anybody watching or listening, we're all sharing this reality, and we can get into what is reality. I'm going to sidestep that. But this outside world is the one that is our outside sensory factual experience. It's what I can see, hear, smell, taste, touch right now. We can share it. But we all have our internal world as well. Right. And our internal world is our thoughts, our feelings, the urges, the sensations. And that is not something that anybody else can know. Now I can share, and as someone who's done therapy for 20 years, practiced it, I have an annoying habit of asking people, what are you thinking? It's because I don't want to make assumptions about your inside world.
Right.
But here's what most people don't know is they're not aware that those are two different things, because the way our mind works is it takes the stuff happening in our outside world and it fills in the gaps, or it connects the dots. And that's where things like interpretations and predictions and expectations and meaning all come into play. Those aren't in the outside world.
Right.
That's inside world.
Huh.
They blend so seamlessly that most of the time we don't know. So if you've ever had the experience of, not to say your wife by any means, but maybe there was a miscommunication and you're like, this person, they da-da-da-da-da, and you've got this whole story in your head and you're mad and they're mad, and you finally say, well, it's because you thought I was being inconsiderate. And she says, no, I didn't. I was busy thinking about the grocery list. And you realize that miscommunication was all internal world stuff.
Right.
It was our meanings and assumptions that we gave. So when we become aware of that, we can start to shape our internal world, or at least be aware of how it's influencing us.
I mean, that just happened a few days ago.
It does, all the time.
It doesn't happen very often, but when it happens, it can be very draining and takes a while.
Yes, of course.
And like one thing that I've learned is like empathy plays a big role in like situations like that, like our shared world. And then also because just like a computer, it like takes things from us and then it informs the software. Yeah. And then it comes with an output. So absolutely. Well, the same with the mind.
It does. And one of the shortcuts, I love teaching people about the shortcuts our minds take, but one of them is called the fundamental attribution bias. And it is our mind's tendency to basically explain bad behavior in different ways. So it's going to explain my bad behavior as an accident or a mistake, and someone else's as a character flaw. So think about if you're driving down the road and someone cuts you off, it's because they're an idiot driver, right? But if you cut someone off, it's because, oh no, you didn't see them.
Yeah, it's not my fault, it's their fault.
Right, exactly. But this happens in our relationships too. And so one of the best ways to counter that is to be generous or compassionate in your explanations. What's the kindest explanation for that person's behavior? Rather than assuming they don't care, they're being disrespectful, they're whatever. It's what's the kindest explanation I can give, right? Like I'm visually impaired, but a lot of people don't know that because I don't have an outward marker of disability. I don't use a cane or a guide dog. And the number of times people interpret my behavior as I'm stupid or I'm rude is pretty high, because it doesn't occur to them, oh, she didn't wave at me because she can't see. It's, oh, she must be ignoring me. So, but if we could pause and say, well, what's the kindest explanation for that? One, I think we'd get along a little bit better. And two, don't we need more empathy right now?
Especially right now.
Yes.
Empathy is lacking.
It is lacking.
There are even people attacking empathy, which is the weirdest thing ever to me. But like, how does one identify being empathetic in a situation like that? Let's say you and your wife or whoever it may be in your life, that someone that's important to you, you have a conflict is happening, and you don't know how to tap into that empathetic side. Like, how does that look like? Yeah,
the way I think about it is empathy is putting yourself in someone else's shoes, right? But here's what I think people get wrong is we put ourselves in their shoes and then see things from our perspective, right? And not to bring it back to vision again, but that comes readily of, I used to think, oh my gosh, my biggest fear was going blind, because how could I be happy? And I was putting myself in that position and not able to imagine it. And a lot of people pity me. Like, oh my gosh, I can't imagine going through life and not being able to drive or with a vision impairment. I'm like, because you're putting yourself in my shoes, but seeing it from your point of view. I know I'm happier now than I've ever been. When we're really being empathetic, we're putting ourselves in their shoes and seeing it from their perspective. So what would your wife think? How would she feel? Because a lot of times people do that and they're like, well, if I were in that position, here's what I would do. And I'm like, no, you're judging, sweetie. Like, you have to see it from their perspective.
Wow. That's so eye-opening. And I'm not saying this is what my wife does.
Yes, of course not.
She's perfect.
I'm sure she is.
She levitates when she walks.
Yes.
But I think that's very like important to like identify it. Again, if you don't mind repeating that, just so that people can get that. Like, we're trying to put ourselves in people's shoes, but we bring our own perspective, our own reality into their own shoes. Yeah,
we need to put ourselves in their shoes and see it from their perspective, through their eyes, with their histories. And we need to do it with the kindest explanation possible, right? Maybe someone is short with you, not because they're irritated with you, but because they've had a really rough day. And so I think when we can be generous in our explanations, when we can consider what they would see or think or feel in that perspective, that's empathy.
Yeah, I love that. That actually got me so chill.
Yeah.
As you were talking about that, I'm just like, wait, this is a podcast. Yeah. Mind activate right now.
Yeah.
But like another thing that you talked about is like how our minds are holding us back. Can you like expound on that a little bit?
Yeah, there's our minds will completely hold us back if we let them, right? So when I think about it, a belief is simply something that we take to be fact. It's not fact, right? There's very little that we know for sure right now. There's a lot of stuff that we assume is true. And that's all a belief is something that we take to be a fact. Right. And then they become the parameters, right? To go back to what you were talking about, programming, like this is what you can do. So our beliefs form the bounds of our comfort zone. Our beliefs form the instruction manual for how to be Ashley or how to be you moving through the world, right? And the way that we get programmed matters. So when we're little kids, our minds, they don't have any filters. So our minds are just scanning, looking at things, and then making rules about how the world works, about our place in it, what people like us can and can't do. Right. And that becomes core beliefs, operating system, if you will. So when we think about that, there's huge implications, right? So all of our experiences are teaching us something about, are you the kind of person that can be bold? Are you the kind of person that can speak your mind? Can you take chances, or is that bad? Is failure a good thing or a bad thing? All of this stuff. And we don't always know, right? The rules that we're playing by. So it's like we're playing this game without even knowing the rules, unless we're back to that self-awareness and have you done the work to become aware. But I think of our minds like that, right? They're busy telling us, this is what you can do. This is what's okay. And the thing is, whenever you break a rule, it's the same as a lot of times people talk about like stepping out of your comfort zone. And we tend to think about comfort zones when it comes to fear. Like jumping out of an airplane would freak me out, right? I would definitely be anxious. That's out of my comfort zone. Right. For a lot of people, public speaking or being on film is out of their comfort zone. Right. Any rule that you're breaking. So if your mind says anger is not okay, then anytime you feel angry and you go to express it, you're going to start to feel uncomfortable because your mind is going to be saying like, what are you doing? That's against the rules. Or if you're someone who respect really matters, and so letting someone quote unquote disrespect you and meeting them with compassion, that's a more effective strategy for a number of reasons. But if that's not your default, it's going to feel wrong. And so when I think about comfort zones, I really think of familiarity zones, and it's the rules our minds say.
I like that.
Yeah.
Wow. So you like touched on, like core beliefs and this is a term that I hear a lot, but I don't think a lot of people quite understand what it is. Like what exactly are core beliefs and how are they formed just in general?
Yeah. So core beliefs are those things. It is our operating system. It's the rules by which we live, the things that we take to be true.
Right.
And oftentimes those are subconscious. So one of the ways I kind of think about it is if you can start to catch your automatic thoughts. So the automatic thoughts are more the surface level ones, the above the surface of the water, if we go back to that iceberg. So in any given situation, those are the ones that are fleeting through your mind.
Right.
So let's say you make a mistake and your immediate thought is, oh my gosh, that's horrible. I'm such a failure. Things aren't going to work out. There's probably a core belief down there that mistakes are bad. I'm perfect or I'm a failure, something like that. So core beliefs sort of bubble up as automatic thoughts.
Right.
You might also in that same situation have the automatic thought of like, oh, cool. I learned that now. That's really neat. You probably have a core belief then that failing is important or helpful. Now, that's not what most of us are programmed. So if you really get to that point, you've done some work, right? Most of us are taught failing is bad.
Yes.
Which, side note, is weird, right? Because when we think about toddlers, they
fail every day.
Every day. That's how they learn to walk, right? They stand, they fall, and we cheer them on. Somehow along the way, though, we get the message that failing is not okay.
Right.
But if we go back to core beliefs and how are they formed, some of it is formed explicitly, meaning we are directly taught. This is what men do. This is what women do. This is what people like us do and don't do. This is what this is how money works, or this is, we're explicitly taught there is a God or there's not a God. Like we're explicitly taught people through lecture, through conversation, through direct teaching. Then there's implicit learning. And that is the learning that's taken place behind the scenes, right? This is the stuff that our mind is going, oh, this dot connects to this one. And we're learning, it's the unspoken messages. So to kind of stick with the failure thing, parents will explicitly say, I just want you to do your best. And then you bring home a report card and it's got a B on it. And they say, why didn't you get an A? If you studied a little harder, you'd get an A.
Right.
What are we really learning? It's not good enough if it's not perfect.
Yeah.
So that's where our beliefs come from. And they come from our society as well. Like, what are we moving through the world with whatever cards we've been dealt, gender, race, socioeconomic status, ability, all of those things. Like we're picking up messages in our culture too, and those inform our core beliefs.
Wow. So basically, as a parent, you definitely need therapy.
Yeah, everybody does.
Yeah,
and as a parent, just start making peace with the fact that you're going to do some things wrong.
Right. No, yeah.
Your sons are going to have things to talk about.
For sure.
Yeah.
That's why I wear a hat and a bandana, because I'm not about to hear someone's belief and whatever they went through penetrate my mind.
There you go.
So I'm like, wear a fedora and a hat.
There you go.
So another thing that I wanted to talk to you about is like taking care of your mind, which you've talked about here just right now. But I want to get deeper into it, because here on this section, you like talked about tending your mind's garden, basically cultivating the right beliefs.
Yeah.
So how does that look like? Just for I'm like trying to create a profile, but then also generalize it, those two areas.
Yeah, absolutely. So if we can talk about sort of two pieces, right? How do we take care of our mind? On the hardware side, or I guess it'd be more like, how do you take care of your brain? Those are going to be things like you need to sleep, you need to eat real non-processed foods, you need to exercise.
I just had McDonald's.
You're failing. Your brain is going to be like,
I didn't sleep last night. Haven't eaten yet.
There you go. You have to do these things. And then the best thing that you can do is a mindfulness practice. That is the mental equivalent of going to the gym. Okay. But then to the book, the part you're referencing, tending your mind's garden. If we think about your mind as a garden and your beliefs are the plants that are there, some of them are invasive species, right? Like they got planted there and then they invade and take over. And those are what a lot of times people will call limiting beliefs or self-limiting beliefs. I'm unlovable. I'm not worthy. I'm not as good as other people. The world is a dangerous place. We're all screwed. Whatever it is, that those kind of beliefs, they become like the filter through which you see the world. And so everything gets interpreted through that. And then you respond in kind. If you have an invasive species, a mental weed, if you will, that people are bad everything they do, everything someone else does gets filtered through that. And we're going to be harsh with our explanations, and we're going to respond in kind. And then what happens? If you're responding that way, you're going to get that back, and it confirms it, right? So it becomes this self-fulfilling prophecy. So when I talk about tending your mind's garden, I mean being very intentional about your programming. Think of it as, you know, when you're a little kid and your mind is getting programmed, it's like people are installing a bunch of apps on your phone without even asking you. As an adult, we can have choice. So we can start to say this, you know what, your unworthy app is no longer worthwhile. It's not serving me. Or this, it's bad to disappoint people, so never say no and be the people pleaser, right? We can start to say, those aren't working for me anymore. I want to reprogram my mind. 2 ways to do that. So it's a very long way to get to the goods, right? 2 ways to do that. One is through our self-talk. We can intentionally start to question, right? So if I'm not my mind, all of a sudden I can argue this. And I can treat it like an inner hater. And I can say something like, really? Where's your proof? Now be prepared, because it will serve up proof, because that's just the confirmation bias and how it works. You have to also ask for proof against it. What's the other side? Can you build a case for the other side? How do you know that's going to happen, mind? So what if it does? Is it really that bad? So we can start to argue it and use logic, and then start to tell ourselves the new beliefs, right? And it's going to feel fake at first. It's fine. It's just because you're not used to it. It's sort of like if I'm very right-handed, and if I decided for whatever reason I wanted to be left-handed, I'm going to have to start writing, and it's going to feel awkward and weird. But if I keep doing it, it will become natural. If you want to be compassionate to yourself and say, you know what, mistakes are just part of living. That's a good thing. That's the way you learn. You're going to have to say it like 8 million times before it feels natural. So 1, challenge your thoughts, argue them, like think your way through it. But the more effective route is that I like to use the phrase, we build belief through behavior. Actions speak louder than words. So if I want to teach my mind something, I want to shift my beliefs, I'm going to act as though I already believe it. So in psychology, that's what we say, act as though. Everybody else knows it as fake it till you make it. So if what you really want is confidence, all confidence is trusting that if you are your real self, it will be okay. Or if it's not, that you can count on you to handle it. Okay, the only way to do that is to start acting that way. And if you start putting yourself out there, again, stretching that comfort zone, acting as though you already believe it. At some point, our brains, they don't like dissonance where our actions and our beliefs don't match. So if you keep your actions consistent, our brains will go like, ugh, I guess this is what we believe now.
Wow, that's powerful. And like, you know, I can even relate to that, because to me, the reason why I've been wearing this fedora, I'm intentionally trying to not identify with everything that I do. Because I do a lot of things. You know, I'm a filmmaker. You know, I work in, you know, mental health. I write, and I do so many random stuff sometimes. I used to do parkour. So I intentionally create all these buckets. I don't know whether that's healthy, where, you know, when I'm in that space, that's what I'm focused on. But when I'm out of it, that's not who I am. You know, I'm Abraham who does all of these different things. And I go all in with everything that I do. But it's not my identity, because I believe that the moment I put my identity in any one of them, then it becomes defective if I make any mistake. Maybe I'm running away from mistakes.
No, but what you're doing is you're making mistakes not threaten your core self, which is the issue, right? Like a lot of people have heard of the terms growth mindset and fixed mindset. There's a lot of data behind it, very, very solid. All it means is a growth mindset is the yet. I can't do this yet. And a fixed mindset is this belief that abilities, talents, skills are innate. So you either have them or you don't. The thing is, if you have a fixed mindset, let's say, and then you make a mistake, it hits your core, right? Because this is it, and a mistake is it. I'm bad, right? If you have a growth mindset, or you do what you're doing and you're saying like, oh, well, that's just a hat I wear. That's just a role that I fill. That's not me. All of a sudden, mistakes aren't a threat. They're just part of the process, a learning experience.
That's literally what I say, part of my process.
I think that's brilliant. The other piece that I like about that is I think a lot of people, when it comes to identity, that's interesting to dive in. There's a whole lot there.
Like, let's do this.
So identity is just your mindset of beliefs about who you are and what people like you can and can't do. It is beliefs. Those are mental constructions. Those are not reality. So we can change our identity anytime if you want to. and you're willing to do the work.
Right.
But when we put all of our identity eggs in one basket, so to speak, when that thing gets threatened, like let's say you're like, I am a filmmaker, and you make a film and it busts.
Then you were screwed.
It's it,
yes.
right? It's sort of like, if you're an investor financially, the recommendation is like, don't go all in on one thing. You want to be diversified to bear volatility. It's the same thing with our identity. We want to have a lot of facets, a lot of things that we're invested in. But the other piece that I think is so interesting, I guess there's two. One is I don't know that there really is this like core real me. Who I am with my family is different than who I am as Dr. Ashley, which is who I'm different than who I am at the gym. Right. Now there's some core there. I have my core values. And I think that's probably what you were getting at when you're like, there's Abraham, right? There's Ashley.
Abraham, yes. I can't put the right words on it, but that same Abraham, which I call like chief empathy officer. Yeah. Like, I approach everything with the same foundation, but I could be a spaghetti. I could be a bread.
Yeah. But I love that too. When you have your core sense of these are my values, like, right. You're the chief empathy officer, mine, courage, curiosity, compassion, and then a handful of other ones. And those are the things that I strive to bring to any task that I'm doing or any interaction that I'm having, because that one, when you're leaning on your values, it becomes a source of resilience so that no matter what else is going on around you, if it's quote unquote good or bad, and we can dive into that too, but it gives you something to draw on. Like I like to tell people, I did not enjoy writing my dissertation. It was not the kind of writing that I like to do. It was not a fun process. Would I do it again? Absolutely, hands down, because it was worthwhile. It allows me to do what I do, right? So when you can lean on your values, like this is who I am and this is the kind of person I want to be, it gives you some bandwidth to deal with ick.
Right. No, like I can relate to that, and I do want to talk about like authenticity in all of this, because I think that I say, like correlation there when it comes to like, just beliefs and, how we identify with things. Sometimes people tend to mistake being like authentic. You feel like if you're authentic, you're supposed to do this thing. Then if you go and do something else, then you're not being authentic. Yeah. Which I see all over the internet. People argue about it all the time. Yeah. Actually, let's talk about that. Okay. Before I can go into my next point.
I think authenticity is really, really important. And what I think of as authenticity, I guess the way I would kind of describe that, it's sharing your inside world with people. And that's what I think a lot of people don't do. It feels very vulnerable to say, I feel this in this moment, or I think this. And so people don't. That's some of the beauty of therapy is you're just sharing your inside world with someone else in a safe context. To me, that's what being authentic is. It's not putting on a mask. It's not putting on a persona. It's not, our polished everything, but it's being real. It's here's my inside world, flaws and all. Now, I do think sometimes people hide behind authenticity to just as an excuse to be rude or disrespect. They're like, I'm just being real. And I'm like, you're just being mean right now. That's not authentic. That's unkind. Like authentic is saying, I'm really frustrated with this. Right. Or I'm very hurt by this. Like that's what I think of authentic. Or to say I struggled, right? Like you see this, but here's all the failures I had before it. Or that's what's important, I think.
Wait, so is there a cost to that? Because I've actual experiences which I shared with you before we started recording, because this used to be named Freedom Project. And it was about my own experience, my story. I was going to therapy and I was coming out of therapy talking about what I went through in therapy. But after 4 years of doing that, I realized, oh my God, that's a lot. And I decided to take most of those content down because I was like, I don't think everyone needs to know about this. And I decided to just now change the framework and pretty much everything. I don't see it as being like, not like authentic. I think it's
not at all
good for my own mental, like stability.
Absolutely.
Because I was oversharing. I was on the internet saying some really heavy things. But I didn't know because I was excited back then. And I was just talking. So the question is like, where's the balance between that? Like, let's say someone is starting now and they get excited and they want to talk about all these things.
That is
How do you protect yourself and who do you share with?
Yeah, such an insightful question, and I appreciate you bringing it up, because I do think right now in the era of authenticity, I think it was the word of the year for 2023, right? And people are wanting authentic, right? And that is translating when we put that in the world of social media, of people sharing all of their personal business all of the time.
One of those guys.
Right. And I share some of mine too. I'm very open now about, my journey with vision loss and what that was like. And I don't think that's necessarily a bad thing. In fact, I think it can be very helpful when you're sharing it, because then other people have permission to share theirs. And what I think it actually does is cut down on shame. Shame is this deep, dark, you are flawed, you are less than, therefore you must hide.
Right.
And when we stop hiding and we start sharing, that shame comes down, and it can feel therapeutic, not just for you, but for the people hearing it as well.
Right.
I do think then sometimes people get to the point where they've sort of worked through it. And it's like, I don't need to do that anymore. I've moved on.
Right.
Cool. I think sometimes people are like, whoa, that was too much. I don't want everybody to know. Like, we can be authentic and still boundaried, right? There are certain things that are very personal and raw for me that I do share. And there are some that I don't, because they are not for everyone.
Right.
And it's not because I'm ashamed. It's because I am protective of myself and the other people involved in those stories.
Exactly.
And I think some of that is looking at also your motives for sharing and what happens when you do. Right. If you find yourself like, I'm just going to hop on Instagram or TikTok and overshare this because you're looking for those likes and that validation, that probably needs to be a wake-up call, that's a process, an internal process that's not very helpful.
Right. Yeah, that sounds like a very expensive cost too.
Yeah.
Because there's something that I personally went through, because I went to therapy. I used to have a really bad stutter. So that's, to me, talking it's so freeing. And
yeah, of course.
That's why I call it the Freedom Project.
Yeah, that makes total sense.
But then I don't have the bandwidth to explain all that. So sometimes they get lost.
Yeah.
But like, when it comes to me just, deciding to take all that down, I didn't feel any type of way about it. But then there were people in my life that was like, why did you take that down? Like, what are you doing, Abraham? I'm just like, you don't get it. It's fine.
That's the exact right response. Like, I'm not going to live my life based on other people's judgments.
I was like, I'm honored that you value that side, and the fact that I can share my story and be so transparent.
Yeah.
But then I realized that I was not only sharing my story, I was sharing other people's story that did not give me the agency to even talk about that.
Yeah, that's where I kind of find myself protective of things, when it's like, that's not just mine to share.
Yeah, but like, how do you make sure that you don't cross that boundary when it comes to telling your story and inspiring other people to have that agency to talk about their own stories?
I think it comes back to that self-reflection. Why am I doing this? Why does this feel important? Is it a courageous move for me? And I also think there are ways to be authentic without having to share your history. Like, we don't have to share trauma. We don't have to share the hard things we've been through to still be authentic. Authenticity can also be present moment. In this moment, as you're saying that, it's not sitting well with me.
Right.
That's authentic. I'm letting my inside world out. Or, wow, you know what? When you said that, that really meant so much. Say that to people, especially to the people close to you, because we just kind of expect that they'll know because they know us so well. No, they need to hear it more so than anybody. Right. But there's ways to be authentic without opening your history for everyone to scrutinize.
I love that. Well, since we're talking about that, I know the section in your book, you like talking about there's no delete button in your brain.
Yeah.
So let's go back to the brain.
Okay.
Like, what exactly do you mean by that?
Yeah. What I mean is that it's both a good thing and a not so good thing, is that there really is no such thing as forgetting. In our subconscious. Right. Consciously, ask me what I wore yesterday. I can't tell you. It's probably sweatpants. I don't know. Ask me.
Now I'm going in my head. Right? I was like, focus, Abraham.
Yeah. But good catch, right? Like, because we mental time travel, right?
What did I wear yesterday?
Right? And then you brought it back. You've got that awareness. So our subconscious is going to remember, and it's going to be deep down and buried in there. And it shapes us and it influences us. Right. And this can be a bad thing because we can't go, oh, you know that thing that happened 12 years ago? I'd really like to go in and just selectively delete that file. Can't do it.
Right.
But it can also be a good thing because if you, let's say I haven't played the piano in 30 years, but if I wanted to go back to it, it's going to come back faster. Like right now I would tell you, I don't know how to play, but I'm going to studies show that you will learn it the second time faster because you didn't actually forget it. You're not starting from scratch.
Right.
So that's what I mean by that is that the stuff, for better or worse, it's in there somewhere.
Right. And like, even as you're saying that, I like remembered the, that like the kids show that I talked about Inside Out, how like Riley kept like putting everything back into the subconscious. And then in the end, everything came back and overwhelmed them.
Well, that's...
and it like shook the entire core belief that she created of all the great things.
Yes.
Nothing negative. Everything negative had to go down into the, like the subconscious.
Yeah.
So I can see the correlation as you're talking about it. There's no delete because everything comes back.
It's going to, well, that's like people like to shove stuff down. It doesn't work. It's like shoving a beach ball underwater.
Right.
Like you can try, but it takes a lot of energy. And at some point it's going to bop you in the face.
Right.
So we have to work through things as they come up. And people shove stuff down in all kinds of ways, like cognitively, meaning I'm just not going to think about it. It doesn't work.
Yeah.
Whatever you do right now, whatever you do, don't think about chocolate cake, right?
Too late. I'm actually getting chocolate cake on my way home.
We can't control our thoughts. We can't control our mind. And so trying not to think about it doesn't work. You'll think about it more. People shove it down by drinking or scrolling or distracting in other ways or staying so busy. And no, we have to be able to process things in real time as they happen, sort through it. I would say make peace, but what I mean by that is accept it. Like it is what it is, and I'm not going to let it define me.
Indeed. And as you're talking, I'm time traveling to my cake later.
Yeah, there you go. You're welcome.
Which actually segues to your next topic, which is mental time travel.
Yeah.
Can you break that down for us?
Yep.
Just as someone who's, wears fedora and likes to wear a bandana as well.
Yeah. All of us mental time travel, right? And it is, what I mean by that is that we're just thinking ahead or we're thinking behind. So the average person is mentally time traveling 47% of the time. So about half of the time, you're not present in your life. We're thinking ahead to what am I going to do next? What am I going to say next? How am I going to respond? What am I going to do tomorrow? What am I going to do in 5 years? What happens, next month? Or we're behind. I can't believe I said that. I can't believe this thing happened yesterday. This thing that happened 25 years ago, right? And this is where awareness comes in or mindfulness comes in, is because I firmly believe time is the most precious resource we have, and it is finite. You get a limited amount of time, and when it's done, it's done.
True.
And we're missing out on half of it. If you're not present, you are missing out. It would be like someone saying, hey, here's a bank account. You don't know how much is in here. Spend it any way you want to, but when it's gone, you're gone. And that's hard enough as it is, but then that would be like flushing half your money down the toilet. Just because, right? So we need to be present, right? What's real right now? Because otherwise our inner world is predicting or dwelling, and that actually tanks our well-being. It makes us less effective as humans.
Right. So how does time travel actually mold our subconscious? Because, to me, I'm time traveling right now to my cake. And I'm literally getting hungry and I'm listening to you. I'm present. So I feel like I'm running so much energy trying to balance all of that. And I'm molding like, now I need to eat.
Well, I'm not really sure how to answer that other than, isn't it interesting that even hunger is a habit that we can trigger? Like it is an indicator of, hey, your body needs food. But also sometimes it's just a habit. We'll think about food, start to feel hungry. Smell food, start to feel hungry. So I think though, when we're time traveling, it does mold us because either we're missing out on what's happening right now. So in relationships, we're not connecting. Right? Or your loved one doesn't feel like you're present, or you're missing out on vital information. We make assumptions. We make predictions that may or may not come to fruition. We can spend a lot of time worrying about things that never happen. And so it zaps joy. It takes energy. It increases your risk for depression and anxiety. So a lot of things.
Wow. That's powerful. So the next thing you talked about is like, when is worry helpful? Since we're talking about time travel and like all these things, but it seems like some amount of worrying is a good thing. So when is it helpful?
Yeah, I love that question, especially in these times, right? When we're living in tumultuous times. And people often say like, I don't want to worry, but they deep down believe worry is helpful. If I don't worry, something bad will happen. And so to me, there's a difference between productive worry and unproductive worry. Productive worry is it's productive, do it. But productive worry it has to be a real problem, not a hypothetical.
Right.
So it's actually happening right now, not down the road, and it's something that I can control.
Right.
So if it's a real problem for today that I can control, it's productive worry, problem solve.
Right.
What a lot of people do, though, is unproductive worry. We're thinking the what ifs and the oh no's, and we're planning for things that we can't control.
I love the way that you frame this question in your book, because I was listening to the audio while reading it, and you were like, fine, then how do I stop worrying?
Yeah.
So this is me asking you that.
Fine, how do I stop worrying? Okay. One, we have to shift our beliefs. You have to actually start to buy into the notion that worry is a control strategy that doesn't work. Worrying about something does not change it, right? Worrying about something on the inside world does not change it in the outside world. And you have to believe that in your bones.
Right.
Worry isn't productive, unless it's those productive worries, right? And you also have to start to really reckon with not worrying does not mean you're responsible, right? Because worrying won't actually change anything. Worry's not a strategy. So then the other pieces you can do is, one, it's starting to be aware, again, of what is your mind doing, because as soon as it's going down that worry track, that's a choice. You can choose to hop off the worry train and come back to right now. So what I used to teach patients is, if it starts with what if, it's a worry. And I would literally say, they would say something like, but Dr. Ashley, what if? And I'm like, what if is a worry? Like, actually forcefully interrupting that. I'm not going to even entertain it.
Right.
Because if we start to mentally entertain, well, what if this happens? And you're like, well, if that happens, I would do this. That's like, if your cell phone rings and you look at it and it's a telemarketer, I'm not even picking up the phone, right? I'm going to go, oh, telemarketer. Nope. You don't pick it up and say like, blah, 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 blah. Same thing. If your mind is saying, what if? I literally in my head will say, what if is a worry? And I just don't engage with it. And that's what I think is the best way to stop worrying.
Right.
And then pay attention to something right here, right now.
All right, so I've got to my final question, which you talked about in your book. You mentioned that we need to redefine bad. Someone very important in my life feels bad about everything, and I'm always trying to remind her, wait, what exactly do you feel bad about?
Yeah.
And I always try to challenge them.
Yeah.
I'm not talking about my wife,
No,
guys.
of course not. It is a hypothetical person.
Yeah. So how exactly, I guess, what do you mean by redefining bad?
Yeah.
And based on my example, feel free to go in and use that as a reference.
Yeah. Well, bad, first of all, bad is not a feeling. It is a judgment. Good is not a feeling. It is a judgment. And judgments are something that we all do. It's just a shortcut that our brain takes to categorize things very quickly. So it's a natural response. But when we label something as bad, what our mind is hearing is, this is a problem. I shouldn't be experiencing this, or I need to fix it. So when we start to label our feelings as bad, right? And we say that all the time. I feel bad, or I feel bad about that. No, that's unhelpful, because you're subconsciously saying, I shouldn't be feeling this way. So we need to get away from bad and good as those are not feelings.
Right.
Be more precise. I feel upset. I feel frustrated. A lot of times when people say I feel bad, they mean I feel guilty, anxious, or sad.
Right.
Okay, fine. What I will say to people if they tell me I feel bad is like, what flavor of bad?
Right.
I want to get more to that feeling, because then we can start to get into, is this feeling helpful or unhelpful, justified or not? Do I want to act on it or not? The other way I think we need to redefine bad, and this may not be quite what you were getting at, but a lot of times then people will also call experiences bad, right? It's a bad experience. And I also don't think that's helpful, because then we're saying, I don't want this, I shouldn't have this. And it sets us up to feel more distressed than we need to.
Right.
So again, I like to be more precise. Like, maybe this is uncomfortable. Maybe it's unpleasant.
Right.
Maybe it's difficult in some other way, but not bad. Because even though, like, I would, again, if I go back to the dissertation experience, I wouldn't call that bad. It was hard. Challenging, unpleasant, but there was value in it. And when we label it as bad, we're also saying there's no value. And I just frankly don't believe that.
Right. Yeah. And like, even
calling it bad just limits you as the individual to even enjoy that experience of something that you went through.
Exactly.
The fun is in the process. So something that I like to say. And then something that I notice when it comes to bad that I want to put emphasis on is like, especially like new parents, they use bad a lot. Because we just had a new baby, and I noticed my wife has been saying it a lot, and the almighty algorithm has been showing me so many videos of moms that are like always talking about how bad they feel about the baby crying, about the diaper change, about is he okay? Oh my God, I feel so bad that I have to sleep, and then I want you to maybe just like reassure them that they're doing great.
Absolutely. Well, it's hard enough. It's hard enough to be a mom without piling on extra stuff. And when we pile on that bad, what's coming along with that is you're not doing enough. You're letting your baby down. Right. You're doing a bad job, right? And that just isn't helpful. There is so much coming at moms, right? And from their own minds, you're not enough. That inner critic gets really, really loud. Right. But it also comes from society as well. There's a lot of messaging out there kind of given this impression that you can do it all. You can be perfectly put together, make the Pinterest perfect cupcakes, and have a perfectly well-behaved child. And all of that is just not real. So I think it's so important for everybody, but for moms especially, ban bad.
Right.
Don't say it, and give credit. Give credit where it's due, which if your baby is growing and your baby is loved, then you're doing a good job.
Indeed. Oh yeah, thank you for that. Because I wanted to put an emphasis on that because my wife right now, new baby, and I always have to remind her that you are doing great.
Keep telling her that.
I'm just like, go to sleep.
Yes.
After what you went through, I saw what you went through. I don't think people, society in general, we don't talk about that enough. And I think we should talk about it enough.
Oh, absolutely.
Like the things that, like a woman's body can do is just incredible.
It is amazing.
So I try to remind her like, hey, look, go to sleep. It's fine. You're doing amazing.
Yeah,
and I have to be very stern
yes,
to make
but
sure
keep
that
doing
you understand.
It. Yeah, because it's so natural though, right? Like she's got all of these biological drives to care for this little human, but she has to take care of her too. And if she doesn't, if she's not okay, nobody's okay. Right.
Oh, yeah.
So
that's true.
Keep telling her that, and tell her that time and time and time and time and time again, because her mind is telling her she's doing a bad job 1,000 times a day.
Amen. Thank you for that, by the way. And now we've come to the end of this. There's so many different sections, which I would love for you to come back so that we can finish this entire book.
Yeah.
But I kind of want to conclude everything that we've talked about, from starting on our two worlds down to just like imagining bad. Like, what would you have to say just to conclude all this first section of your book?
I would take it full circle and say, don't believe everything you think. You are not your mind, and don't believe what it tells you.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much. This is the perfect place to end it. Looking forward to continuing this discussion, but thank you so much for your time.
Thanks for having me.
Of course.